Yes, we finally made it. We're in Toronto, Canada, one of the coolest cities in the world. Check this out.
Welcome to Toronto, Canada, the biggest city in this country. You're watching Post-Capitalist Architecture TV, and this is episode 6 on the ravines.
So, welcome to all of you. We are now going to screen the 6th episode of Post-Capitalist Architecture TV about the ravines. Welcome to the ravine screenings.
Namalasi kreditjoog, missisoos, anishnaabe, chipwa, modernisjooni ja uendat. Lägar maankai First Nation, Inuit ja meeti almuiröki.
This is a perfect spot. Already some materials. Takes a lot of cleaning up to do, you know, all the needles. Hey, some cool shades. Wow, they're awesome.
It's like everything about Toronto is based off pieces about their damn rivers. Like every single damn thing. Like you can connect up anything to like a story about some relationship to the waterways.
Tell us about the ravine system and the waterways and how they have been important for the indigenous culture of this region.
Yeah, I think that we could see those ravine systems as the end point of a larger trade route. So there were large supply routes that were running north and south from the upper Great Lakes, from Georgian Bay or Lake Huron down to Lake Ontario. And there were settlements all along those routes. There were various spots also along those routes that were plentiful for fish collection, for such things as clay collections and settlement, so fresh water. And also the area in this region is very fertile because of those ravine systems. So there was corn agriculture here from early days, from before contact. Evidence of large villages and towns along these routes, most of which culminated in the Toronto region around the three rivers, the three main rivers that flow into Lake Ontario in this region. So that would be to the west, the Humber River, the river that you are on, which is the Center River, which is the Don, and then to the east, the Rouge River. So three main rivers that flowed here, and their associated tributaries, series of creeks. And those creeks created the ravines. And Toronto really is a city of ravines. And of course, much of this has been obliterated by the development, urban development in the city and settler activities in order to inscribe a grid across this geological or geographical formation. So sometimes it's difficult to see just how many ravines there are in Toronto. But if you do what you're doing, which is to encamp yourself in the center of that ravine, you can see how extensive that system is.
Right, now we're in Toronto. We're gonna meet Daniel Rotz. Okay, now we're in Toronto. We're going to meet Daniel Rotston. He's a visual artist and an urban geographer. I think he's there, right there. Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Nice to meet you. Heard lots about you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I heard a lot about you also.
Hello.
He's Kenara. He's my cousin.
Okay, nice.
Filmmaker. Yes.
Yeah, so the ravines that we have today are the remnants of the glacial geology in the Toronto region. So this area was covered by glaciers, several, 2 CN towers high, and hundreds of thousands of years ago. And as they receded, they started carving the soft till that was below them. So the ravines are actually remnants of like glacial waterways, and they're quite large, and the streams that remain today are quite small, but they indicate that there were waterways that were very, very large, that were rushing, carving these ravines.
But
Hey, well, look at all the fish.
oh, what do you see?
Small fish.
Oh yeah.
What are they? Yeah, we're now at the Don River, at the eastern part, and we are gonna we're actually gonna paddle all the way down to the Ontario Lake, the lakeside in the city, through the city of Toronto, together with Amish Morrell here, who's an artist and a canoe connoisseur. Hey, what's this that you do?
Yeah. This may be. It's not like there's like fish to catch and nice water to drink. It's pretty dirty.
Okay, let's try. Ah, perfect. It has like total banana curve. Feel very safe. We're gonna meet Thomas Hylland Eriksen. He is the most prominent social anthropologist in Norway. Written numerous books that I've been reading since I was 20. He was also the editor of Gata-avisa, an anarchist magazine that I was reading quite a lot in my youth. So I'm really excited about this.
Recording in progress.
Hello, Thomas.
Hallo. Der fikk vi det til, ja. Det er bra.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. The sort of the stark contrast between nature and culture is not something that is universal. It's not something you find in every culture or in every historical period. In fact, we can position it quite accurately to the 16th, 17th century in Europe, the early modern time, when that division really became established through the philosophy of people like René Descartes, through the scientific revolution, and it became important at the time to have this stark separation. And at the same time, we have to keep in mind the tradition of humanism grew out. You know, humanism, the human being as the center of the universe. There was a movement of secularization. Religion lost much of its power, so humans and human productions became somehow the central focus of a lot of what people did, both in literature, philosophy, and in the sciences. But what has happened in recent years is that we realize more and more that this distinction, for one thing, it's not universal. You don't find it in indigenous groups, and also in many other traditional cultures. There isn't such a stark division between nature and culture. And secondly, that it has in fact had some very harmful consequences through environmental destruction, climate change, and you might say a loss of presence in the environment. Because the knowledge that is produced by science is very abstract, it's very universalist, and it doesn't necessarily connect with people's experience. So I think it's important to emphasize, and this is what many anthropologists, not least, have been doing in the last few years or last couple of decades, to emphasize that there are many ways of placing yourself and engaging with the world. It can be quite important for us to be able to learn from others. Other people who have lived sustainably, who have lived not against nature, but in nature. People who would say that this land doesn't belong to us, we belong to the land, which is commonly said, not least among Sámi in northern Scandinavia. So the kind of knowledge which is typical of indigenous peoples around the world is what I would call local knowledge. It's intimate knowledge of your environment. You know exactly where every little, clump of trees is, and where every hill is, and where to go to hunt rabbits, or where to go to fish, and what time of the year you should go to fish trout, etc. And some indigenous people have a very detailed knowledge of their surroundings. This is experience near knowledge that you need in order to survive, in order to live with your environment. And some of that knowledge has been lost because of the abstract scientific knowledge that dominates in our culture. So I think we need to revalorize the culture, the language of experience as well. But of course, people are different. People have different experiences. It's not as if indigenous groups speak with one voice. And that's just how it should be. Because we all live, as I say, in hybrid, mixed worlds. And that's where we get much of our creativity, isn't it? So that's a boat behind you, is it? It's a boat.
It's a canoe. Yeah, I'll show you. So we are we've been cleaning up this space. We're not gentrifying it, but we are making it into a space where we can host a little event and invite people in without being afraid. There's a guy called Nick that lives in a small tent over there. He's a First Nation from Saskatoon, so we became acquainted with him. So we're like also making sure that we respect all the neighbors here.
I want to put this piece of stone on top of a inucho. This is polar bear head.
Wow. Incredible.
The Inuchuks, they represent different different meanings, and as an artist, we're finding ways to be creative instead of having just the raw head. We want to put a polar bear head on top of the Inuchuk. All right.
I've been traveling the ravines for probably 25 years. And so river is a kind of pedagogy. It's also, I was thinking about in my own practice about, which always involves moving. It's about knowing knowing spaces through the body and describing spaces through the body. And also that being a social, collective, cultural experience, about complicating and deepening cultures of nature through embodiment, through conversation, by sharing knowledge and in some of these places. And so one of the things I love doing, which we're doing right now, is having some time outside and getting to know each other. So I think of the river as a kind of, I think about the body as a kind of, embodiment as a kind of research methodology. I think about the canoe as a kind of research methodology. Outdoor school kind of began with a model of the mushroom foray of bringing people with different knowledge together. So bringing people who have a kind of specialized, maybe a scientific knowledge, together with people who know a place really, really well, and really expanding our sense of what that place is like, and also describing it and noticing it and attuning our senses in different ways. I feel like one of the most colonized spaces is the outdoors. It's really regulated through commercial culture, through nationalism, through ideas of athleticism, about idealized conceptions of the body. And I think we really need to complicate that, because you can connect to nature anywhere. I also think my relationship to the Don and to the ravines has largely been a fugitive one. And it's been finding spaces in between the structures, the colonized spaces, the roads, the bike paths, the established routes. It's following trails that other people have made just through repetition. And you have this corridor, this other kind of spatial temporal dimension right in the middle of the city, where you go out there and there's silence, you hear coyotes howling in the distance, you can see the stars. It's absolutely amazing. I think it's really key to decolonizing the places, to indigenizing these places. It's about building relationships and practices. And I see that as more in a kind of a spiritual, philosophical, embodied cultural practice, and not necessarily simply a planning or an architectural or infrastructural change. I feel it's a change of ways of being.
Oh.
Industrial scale.
got consulted with the city. They were like, how do we let Native people like take the lead in like when we return from COVID and like access to activities and stuff? So we had a meeting with the city, and I was like, what we need is like dibs and also like kind of a roster of where outdoor spaces are that are not public and that are actually like privately owned or contributed, or like even public spaces that can be booked in a specific way. Like if you want to say we want access to outdoor stuff, like then make it happen. Like make a literal sign up place where people can like donate their backyards and donate their other spaces, so that Native people who want to do things within the city with some sense of privacy or some sense of like individual agency without some overlord kind of situation happening, because none of us have access. I live on a reserve and I don't have access to any land. Like there's nothing, there's no place for me to go. My family doesn't have a cottage, like, so like there's nowhere. So unless I go up to Scarborough and I drive myself up there, I can't access any water. That's like nobody messing with me.
What do you think the ravines represent today as an indigenous space or landscape in the city?
Oh, I think that it is a way for us to remember. So I think it's a very important psychological site. It's a narrative site because it is one of the few places in the city that still contains a trace of the early history of this place. So many of the other geographical or topological structures have been altered in order to create the city. But the ravines remain remarkably natural. And this is quite, I'm not sure that this was done on purpose. I think this was a little bit of an accident, but it's a very happy accident because it allows us to regain some of our connection to this place as a site, as a lived memory. And so this is a beautiful thing for us. I have been talking to various people about, renaming places in Toronto. And a lot of that focus has been on buildings or monuments or streets. But I would think that a wonderful site for us to consider naming would be the ravines, because this would allow us to then start to talk about, who lived there, what they did there, what animals lived there, what was practiced there, if it was fishing, if it was cultivation, if it was a waterway, a passageway, north or south. So I think that the ravines are an incredibly happy accident in the city of Toronto that allow us to recoup some of our very precious memories.
Ganska kört det där. Pretty.
Yeah.
It's very, very nice. Oh, there's Adrian. Welcome to the Ravine Cinema.
Thank you.
We're building a movie screen.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so we'll be screening the film about the ravines, featuring Adrian Blackwell as well. Adrian is an architect, teaching at Waterloo. We've been exhibiting together and met a couple of times the last years. Welcome, let's sit down and have a chat.
Thanks.
You can
Great
park
to be
your
here.
bike
What a beautiful camp. I've been working for maybe 4 years on this journal issue of the journal Scapegoat, Architecture, Landscape, Political Economy. And the subtitle of the issue is delineating nation-state capitalism. And so I'm working with David Fortin, who's a Métis architect. One of our starting points was that in the 1970s especially, a lot of architects started to think about how property conditioned the form of architecture, how the way land was subdivided was the biggest constraint on what you could build. And in the end, architectural typology, the fundamental form of the city, is determined by the way you subdivide the land. And so we thought that's very interesting. But when you think about that problem in North America, immediately you have to go backwards in time and think about how that property was formed in the first place and the violence of that Indigenous land dispossession. And so the journal issue really tries to bring these two narratives together. It tries to think how architects who are very formalist and interested in the historic structure of the city understand it to be based in property, but here property is something that was part of a violent process of colonization. And so part of our hypothesis is that the pathologies of the contemporary city are founded in this violent land dispossession. And they're not separate things, they're part of a continuous history. And I think alongside that, within the issue, another thing we were very interested in around property that a number of recent writers have talked about is the idea that even this idea of capitalist property is generated in contexts like this one, settler colonial contexts. Also, the whole idea that you can buy and sell and circulate land as property, which is so absurd, is such a novel, modern, and strange invention that we take for granted. We think it's just the way land should be dealt with. But it needs to be, we need to understand how exceptional that is in human history and how violent the very idea that you could circulate land is.
I've heard them described as the sunken gardens, the subterranean landscape. So of course there's this wild edge that the city of Toronto has, and they're kind of like these autonomous zones. They're hard to manage. There's, instead of one pathway, there's all these different pathways, and they've always been home to, people at the margins of society. And so, people are living in the ravines. Historically, it was, outlaws would go to the ravines, people who didn't fit into society, and then the ravines would have like this scary reputation.
Bigger picture in terms of homelessness in Toronto is that things have been getting worse for a long time. I think sometimes the language around homelessness is framed as, the homelessness crisis. But I actually think more accurately, we need to talk about it as an affordability crisis and a housing crisis. So like specifically in Toronto, we are seeing condos go up so quickly. And the condos that are going up, a lot of them sit vacant, or they're just like not affordable for most people. And so specifically in Toronto, what we're seeing is that more and more people are becoming homeless. COVID, I think, made a lot of this more visible because a lot of people ended up, feeling really unsafe in conventional shelters. So they moved outside. But honestly, like this is something that I have seen get worse over the last number of years. There's a number of people who move into ravines because, if we're talking about homes, one of the important things about having a home is having access to privacy and safety, right? So having a door to lock so that your belongings are protected. So a number of people choose to stay in ravines because there is a sense of privacy there, because it's quieter, it's away from sort of the hustle and bustle of the city. If it's of help to you, I can sort of show you even just specifically on our street where we're located. So actually, let me just reverse the camera. Okay. So what you see here is, so this is Charles Street. Even just about 10 to 15 years ago was a street that was full of like old heritage buildings. We've seen like basically all of these condos go up. Oh, you can say hi to my friend Rob. This is Rob. This is Mary Jane. Hi, MJ. Hi. Our direct neighbor now is this condo. And you can imagine how some of the neighbors on this street feel about having homeless people around, right? And so a lot of the people that are camping in the ravines are people who used to call this neighborhood home, but because of the influx of these buildings, they now know that they're not welcome here. So this is the front of the sanctuary building. And what we have right now is a whole bunch of tents, for instance, right on our property here. We have some in our backyard. And so there's currently actually a lot of conflict between our neighbors and the fact that we have tents on their property because our neighbors obviously don't like it. And now this here is one of the public parks that we have in Toronto. So you'll see that it's fenced off. Well, so there's a new sign that they've put up in parks across the city that say you're not allowed to put a tent up. So at the start of the pandemic, this park, because it was right beside Sanctuary, we had about 75 tents on this property. Yeah. Again, because people had nowhere to go. And again, the landscape of the neighborhood is that the neighborhood didn't like it. They said it was really unsafe. And again, if you think about the socioeconomic class of this neighborhood, the neighbors in this neighborhood, their voices carry a lot of weight. And so this was one of the first parks to basically get cleared. We've seen across the city a lot of these signs. And so that's why we end up, having a lot of people that will move into ravines because that's the option that they have.
My name's Kelly. I've lived down here for a year and a half. There is 3, 4, 5 guys all in total within a 1 mile radius of me. They steal my stuff. They cut up my tents. They take all my food. But I still struggle to survive when I do it. The government pushed us down here. It takes me every day to get ready, to go out, just to get my daily living, about 2 hours to get up, get dressed, get ready to get out of here, and then up the hill.
Je suis le professeur. Vous êtes l'élève.
It's important that we not look at the past and just say that, okay, at that time we didn't know and we were stupid and now we want to fix everything. It's important to also create these kind of environments that show how things are changing. Both important to keep these as reminders on not doing the same mistake, but also to understand how our environment are changing. And also create opportunity for people to reflect and pass judgment themselves. So in the Toronto case, maybe I saw the illustration of this nice river, everything is nice and bendy, and maybe that's not the image we really need. Maybe you need to make it more complex. It looks like a river that's idolizing an old-time idea of nature, and rather than how nature is in the Anthropocene. So I think the word itself, naturalization, needs to be examined critically. Sometimes renaturalization is sort of combined with a very romantic view on nature that doesn't really take into account the real dynamics of nature and also how complex our own relationship with nature is. So these projects end up reflecting ourselves more than nature in a way.
But it's also like, I feel like thinking about, all this like naturalization process and also like how economical drainage of these type of projects. It's such a paradox that at the same time as we're, sort of eating up the sort of less urbanized area and exploiting the nature, sort of urbanizing them as well. We are spending, you know, an equal amount of money on sort of reclaiming nature in the over-industrialized urban context. So it's like this, it's like feels like this sort of kind of a nonsensical dynamic on a global scale that we're like, you know, we're destroying nature on one part of the world, and then we're reclaiming the stuff we already destroyed in another part of the world. And the economy around these two things are sort of never really seeing each other, meeting each other, but they are part of the same system.
For me, it really exemplifies how ambiguous the human relationship to our natural world is. There's a lot of paradoxes in our relationship. So that's why you can do one thing with one hand and the opposite with the other hand, and not seeing that as a conflict.
Well, cleaning up here has obviously been almost like a sort of a contemporary archaeological excavation. So we found all these weird things, like you won't believe it. Of course, a lot of needles, what I thought was crack pipes, but apparently they're meth pipes. Hockey sticks. We were lucky to find some tools, all kind of stuff, jewelry. We also found this nice little set of earrings, which I will bring home to my daughter. Also about sort of the ravine system as a ecosystem. How is it now to how it maybe originally was? Has it changed so much that it's more like
It's in a sad state.
Yeah.
You might have noticed like the soil erosion is really, really bad. The soil's been extremely compacted from like overuse. So the trees, the angle that the trees kind of are hanging at is it's quite extreme. So the soil quality is pretty poor.
How do you predict the future of the dome? Is it going to keep? Is it going to keep?
I mean, ecology is my background, more than kind of parks management. So I guess my concern is always managing human access and enjoyment versus just pure nature, letting nature do its thing and recover. I think humans have a tendency to just want to intervene and create strategies and like management plans, but sometimes you just have to like accept that we might not be able to have access to this area, but that's the best thing for the area. But it's hard because people want to have fun in nature, right? So it's just, for me, I just always think about balancing human access to certain areas and human enjoyment versus just letting things recover.
What did you call the bird, Joe? Oreo? Like the cookie?
Okay.
I lost track of the information. The directions to where I'm heading. It must be just waiting. Somewhere for me to find. It must be somewhere there in the snowdrifts of my mind. In the snowdrifts of my mind. Or maybe just at the edge of the frozen water line. All roads must lead somewhere. All roads must lead me away from me. All roads must lead towards a 24-hour convenience store. All roads must lead towards my horse, towards my station, towards my violins, rose in my crown, towards my obscure precincts, towards my memory of a feeling. Where I'm heading